In a world where balancing business success and parenting can feel like mission impossible, the question we need to ask is, how are you really, Mum? Hi, I'm Shaun Tucker, founder of Mum First, a coaching and business community dedicated to helping mums in business. And I'm here to bring you a unique podcast that's especially designed for you, the amazing business-minded mums who are juggling careers and family life seamlessly, or so it seems. Welcome to How Are You Really, Mum, the podcast where we dive deep into your challenges and your triumphs. From candid interviews with successful mums to practical advice and heartwarming stories, we won't shy away from tough conversations. Enjoy. Tune into How Are You Really, Mum, where we transform those taboos into everyday conversations. Subscribe now and let me help you carve out the space you need to nurture both your business ambitions and your family. I hope you enjoy the show. And welcome back to another episode of the How Are You Really, Mum podcast with me, Shaun Tucker. And I'm so awesome to welcome. I feel so awesome to welcome a really special lady here today. Her name is Ruqya Khan, and she's actually residing in the UAE. And Ruqya Khan is a S.M.I.L.E Strategist. I've known her for about 2 years, and she comes from the world of words. She wears more than 23 years of experience as a wordsmith. She's a master practitioner of NLP, hypnotherapy, and timeline therapy. She's a life coach certified by the International Coaching Federation at the PCC level. Her patented S.M.I.L.E strategy was created for the TEDx talk she presented in 2016. She has so far presented her S.M.I.L.E in 10 countries and even at the World Happiness Fest in Miami this year. She helps people get from unstuck to stuck using her S.M.I.L.E, which spells smile. Her intent is to change lives with a smile and one conversation at a time. So Ruqya Khan, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Shaun, for having me over. And as I say, it's one conversation at a time, and I'm so grateful for having this conversation with you and your audience. Thank you so much.
Yes. No, it's going to be one hell of a conversation, I must say. And when I say one hell, it's like we don't really know where it's going to go, and that's the beauty of it sometimes. Because when we lead with where the conversation flows, we really open up to the possibility of going to places that we don't plan for, but sometimes it just flows out, and that's the beauty of these kind of conversations. So, Ruqya, I mean, you're a mother to 2 kids, right?
Yes,
Let's start there. And how old are your kids?
My children are grown up, but they'll always be children, isn't it? My son is 23.
Absolutely.
And my daughter is turning 28 this year.
Goodness. And you actually, I remember the first time I met you, I'm like, there's no way. I think your daughter was also there when we met, because we met at a business networking event when you were here in Australia. And I was like, no way, she's your daughter. You look very young as well. So what I'm saying is you look like a very, very young mum, but you have a world of experience when it comes to not only being a mum, but working in the industry that you do as a coach.
Yes.
Do you see a lot of crossover between being a mum and what you do for work right now?
There definitely is, isn't? I see it as the mum is the very first coach a child has.
Yes.
And because of who a coach is, as in, they don't just, coaching is very different from consulting and being a psychologist, right? It's very different. It's where you are asking the right questions. It's with your behavior, with your listening power, that you're connecting with your coachee. So now if you take that into the motherhood space, it's so beautiful when you listen to your child, when you learn from your children. And I always say I grew up with my children.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I have a very young daughter right now, and I feel like you relive
the moments of being a kid again through some of the experiences your children live through. Like at the moment, we're very slowly introducing little bits of food, and she was very keen to watch us eat and was opening her mouth every time a spoon would come near her. So we're like, all right, well, we're not going to wait until 6 months. We're just going to go very slowly and just go on gut instincts. What she's gonna try and how she's gonna find it. And it's been a really interesting experience to watch that as well. So I love that you've just really demonstrated through being a coach it very much. The mum, also the dad, but certainly the mum, that relationship between child and mum is so special.
It is. It sure is. And I started doing what I started doing because of the children, Shaun, to be honest. I mean, I started as a writer in 2000, and this was when my son was just 8 months old and my daughter had just started school. So for me, I was very aware that the children were watching. And because they were watching, for me, it was like, I need to do something different from my life, something that's more fulfilling, because then they begin to connect the dots. And like you said, she opens her mouth when the spoon comes to her. That's because she's been observing. So the children are going to observe, they are going to take note, and then they're going to apply what they're seeing in their own space and their own lives. And so that was the whole vision behind transitioning from being a mom, a homemaker, to a writer, a wordsmith, and now a S.M.I.L.E strategist and coach.
Yeah. I mean, that itself takes a lot of wisdom and experience because, I mean, we're quite fortunate now that we have access to the internet and things like that, right? So we do see how people live different lives and things like that. Sometimes it's obviously not the most accurate. It's not their real life that they're living, what they show on social media. But I guess my point is, if you go back 50, even 40 years, a lot of the time you would just do what your parents were doing or what they kind of told you to do, right?
Exactly.
And if your parents ran a business that was laboring or some kind of, blue collar work, then you're most likely going to fall into that same pattern because you do what you know.
Exactly.
Whereas now we have this almost paradox of choice when it comes to what do you do for your life? And I mean, your children have probably gone through that in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
How has that been watching them go through that?
I'm going to connect with the first bit that you just said about 40 years and doing what your parents did or do what they told you to. So I am actually a graduate of science because my mom wanted me to be a doctor. However, obviously life had other plans, and so here I am. But with my children, because of what I went through in terms of not having a decision in my own life, I did keep as best flexibility as I could in terms of taking your own decisions. Of course, the mom and we will always step in and ask questions. However, majorly they make their own decisions. Majorly they know where they're going and they keep us informed. And I think that's the kind of relationship that really feels very satisfying. That it's more of a friendship than a dictatorship. And that really makes a difference in the relationship.
Yeah, and it goes through stages of evolution, right? I mean, as the child becomes less and less dependent on the parents, especially the mum, I mean, naturally there should be some sort of evolution, but I know in different cultures, it's not so much the case. Some more traditional cultures will be very strict and they've kind of forged a path. And my wife is from Singapore. She's Singaporean Chinese background. It's like they have a paved path for them. The parents and the grandparents are like, this is what you're going to do.
So that's pretty much how it is for us as well. I'm from India. So yes, it's pretty much, at least in my home, in my family, my mom, it was that way. So she even asked me, okay, so you didn't become a doctor. Do you think your children would be interested? And no, they will make their own choices.
Yeah. I love that. But there's still hope. There's still hope.
There's still hope.
Yeah, I mean, from even my experience, I mean, this is the reason why I'm doing this podcast, but not only this podcast, it's the reason I've had so many different evolutions throughout my journey is I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And partly because there's a lot of pressure when you go through the school system
Yeah.
to figure out what you want to do.
True.
And when you get to the point where it's like, all right, you're off to university.
Hmm.
Oh, shit. I really don't know what I want to do.
It's like taking the balancing wheels off your cycle. Suddenly, overnight, somebody just sneaks in, takes those balancing wheels off your cycle, and the next day you have to go on your own, find your balance, and make sure you're making progress. Because if you stop midway, you could fall and get hurt. And you're scared about that
Yeah,
as well, aren't you?
definitely. And then it becomes like, well, now I have so much power, I
Very
can
good.
really travel wherever I want to go. So where do I want to go? And it's only when you start meeting people, other people that maybe you hadn't met before or that weren't in your social circles as you're going through school and things like that. As that sort of expands, you get new ideas, you start to get new sort of expanded possibilities, I want to say, around these people are living very, very different lives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I relate to that. I come from the countryside in Victoria here in Australia.
Ooh, beautiful.
I didn't really try spicy food until I was, I don't know, 17, 18. And in the school that I went to, there was literally 3 Chinese kids in the whole school. Most of us were white. It was a very interesting shift to go from where I was in that. It was not a small town, but I'm talking this was 15 years ago when I graduated high school.
Hmm.
And it's changed a lot now, but the multiculturalism and the kind of things that we probably even take for granted now, like there's been a huge journey of evolution of expanded possibilities because we're introduced to different people. Our networks are expanding. There's new ideas.
Yes.
And with the capabilities of the internet now, it's like there's so much possibility.
Exactly.
So how do you, and I love that you're a S.M.I.L.E strategist because not only is that great for marketing and things like that, but I love that you've been on the journey that you have to navigate and focus down what it is that you really truly care for.
Thank you.
Because ultimately, you're the leader, you're the mum. You want to show your kids that they have lots of possibilities. And there's also this freedom to choose what feels good for them. Can you tell us more about how that's going for them now and how that's going for you as you observe?
When you and thank you for that question, because when you're in that place of leading, or when you're in the role model place, if I may call it that, the level of confidence with which you make your decisions somehow also reflect, or the children mirror it for sure. And both of my children, actually, Shaun, when I say I grew up with my children, it is that they and our conversations with each other are the ones that help us make our decisions, even for me. So it's not like I make my individual decisions and then I announce it to the family. No, we have proper decisions that we make when we're talking together. We're understanding the different the strengths, the weaknesses of the scenario, what could happen, what could not happen, and all of that. So yes, that makes a massive difference. You were talking about something earlier about how when you're not exposed globally. So for instance, with the way technology has changed, I think a few years earlier, having conversations like these that we are right now would possibly not be possible, right? And I've presented
Yeah,
my skill
definitely.
in 10 different countries. And what I've realized is, yes, culturally people might be different, but on the inside, they're all the same. They have the same hopes, the same fears. Everybody smiles the same. So it's all we might be different, yet we're all the same. We're a common thread of human race. And I think that's why when I listen to your podcast and these interviews, what I realize is mums at the core are the same, no matter what
Yeah,
culture.
it's so interesting because, yeah, it goes deeper than what we just see on the surface.
Yep.
Right? And that's what I love about this space of coaching is when someone's presenting with oh, like I need to get more business or I'm not getting clients or whatever it is in their business, right? Even sometimes just asking a question that kind of helps them understand that, well, they're experiencing this, but it's not really this, it's just a symptom, right? It's not the cause. And I know from your background of your NLP and timeline therapies and other modalities, these symptoms that people experience, and I'm sure as we go through and navigate the parenthood journey, there's always these things that pop up for our kids, like I'm frustrated or I really don't know what I want to do. And these tools that you're really, really equipped with how much have they really helped, I guess, in the last few years, maybe with the conversations as you've grown with your kids as well?
It helps immensely. It helps immensely in terms of having those transparent conversations, not being in a space of judging a person, listening. I think where a lot of times parents go wrong, and again, not judging, but what I've observed is a lot of times we go wrong because we fail to listen to them. We fail to understand from their perspective. And because we're so quick to jump in and fix the situation, what happens is they hold back. They go to their peers, they go to friends who might not essentially be the right ones to be having these conversations, that are very important. So therefore, I believe it's most important that we keep our doors open and work as best as we can with them as friends and not as someone who knows it all. And just ask and inquire. Be curious instead of being correct.
Yeah, having that almost place of safety, I think is so important. I mean, I remember when I was going through school, I mean, half the reason why I started this podcast was coming from the perspective of being a son, seeing that my mum really doesn't do enough to acknowledge herself and know how capable she is in so many ways. There's so much love that she gives out, but it's really hard for her to receive, probably because it doesn't necessarily feel safe through her experiences and what she's gone through, because her kids are everything to her, right?
Yeah.
And I'm one of 6, so she's got 6 kids. And it goes the same for any mum, I think, out there. And when you have a child who maybe they were born through you, or maybe they weren't, but when you have this level of love of just you want to create that safe environment for them to actually flourish in life, because it's a big responsibility you take on as a parent to bring another life into the world and guide them to become their own being. And I think that's the beauty of what you just said, is you're letting them determine who they are or navigate who they are in a world that's quite, I don't know, quite chaotic in many ways.
Yes.
Quite complex.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you can be the safe space for them, nothing like it. And as you become the safe space for them, they realize the importance of that. And then they choose to also be the safe space for you, which is where we are at the moment. Because they're grown ups. They have a mind of their own and they are their own person, like you've said. And it helps to have conversation with both of them because they help me see sometimes the blind spot that I'm missing. And like you said, there's so much that a mother gives and then fails to take because she is afraid of receiving, or there is a lot of self-worth stuff that might show up. And so when you have that safe space in your children, you realize how beautiful and how far you've come in your own journey, because they then become those mirrors through which you can see yourself and see your success, because that's how they see it.
Yeah. And you can't teach values, right?
No.
You can learn about them, but you really can't teach them. I mean, the values that your children are living now, they're given at a very, very deep unconscious level. And that's the inner compass, right?
It is. Definitely is. I love what you said about values cannot be taught. They really cannot. Um, and therefore, upbringing, the environment at home, the kind of safe space seems to be the word of our conversation today. The kind of safe space you create at home for the children, for their friends. Because again, growing up with them, I used to be the taxi mom. I used to be the mommy taxi, driving them around everywhere, taking them where they need to in the summer breaks. And I used to take them with their friends. So here's a tip if a mom's listening, and for even dads, when you're driving around with your children to places, that's the time that you really get to know them. That's the time you get to know their friends based on the conversations they're having, based on the songs they're listening to. Of course, I'm talking from a very long time ago time, but even now, I'm sure there are ways where you can figure out how you can sometimes maybe fit in, have a conversation with the friends as well, if that's cool enough, and just get to know them.
Yeah. And that's, I think what you just said there, it's so true. Like, I've heard so many stories of Uber drivers literally being told stories that, the people in the rideshare or whatever they're going on, have said, like, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but this is my life story, right? They literally hear all the little ins and outs of this person, probably because they're not really going to see them again. But I think there's actually just this level of, when we're traveling somewhere, I feel like there's an openness. There's an openness that happens within us as a human being.
Yep.
That if the parent is obviously conscious and focusing on the road, right, and they're driving the car, I feel like conversations in a car are usually pretty awesome, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are.
There's a lot of open possibilities, right?
Yes. And I think the fact that you're not looking at each other and the children just feel safe enough to just keep talking and just being very, very comfortable, that just makes things interesting. But the important thing is to pay attention to them as well while they're sharing,
Yeah.
because the last thing you want is for them to share something very important and for you to miss out on it. So if you're capable of doing it, then definitely give it a shot.
Yeah. I mean, I see something huge these days, and I would love your observations from it too, Ruqya, is that
Yes.
many parents these days, and I'll probably give a reason why I think, or the theory that I have, why they let their children do this. But when you go to a restaurant, you see the kids having a little bit of a carry on, right? Like, they're getting a little bit upset, and maybe it's even at their house or wherever it is, but there's a quick fix, and that is to give the child a mobile phone or the device or the iPad, whatever it is, just to kind of entertain them so that they can focus on being present with their food or with their partner or whatever is going on at that moment. And sometimes it's at friends' places and things like that. Sometimes it's just even at home. I mean, my theory is that the parents, they haven't really handled being with themselves properly, so that when the kid is carrying on and having let's say, a really uncomfortable moment, it makes the parent feel really uncomfortable, right? So it's actually showing probably elements of that parents maybe in a shadow, like deep work that could be done, right? And I mean, do these parents even know what they're doing? Do you think?
Tough one there. There could be various reasons to this. It just could be to take the attention off themselves, because of course they don't want to be center of attention. They don't want to disturb others if it's a public place. If they're doing this even at home, then there's reason for me to look into this deeper. But if it's in a public space, then I guess it's largely to avoid any kind of attention or any kind of discomfort to the others. And I get that. However, like you said, values have to be taught at home. The culture has to be built from the home space. Giving the child the mobile at the time at home as a quick fix is not a fix, because then you're adding on to some kind of an addiction, some kind of a risk to stimuli kind of a situation wherein the child needs to get this. And very quickly, the child understands that this is the cause and effect. Now, if I'm going to start throwing a tantrum, the effect of it is going to be mom and dad are going to get uneasy and they're going to grant me my wish. So then, is that something that you want to create and then have the repercussions of as the child grows up? I don't think so. So you might want to take a step back, look at what kind of habits are you imbibing there, and how are they going to serve the child, and how are they going to serve your relationship with your child, and where are you doing this yourself in your own life? It's not always the mobile. It could be something else that you.
I really love what you just said there, because I mean, the awareness that you have from the work that you do, but also just you as a person, right? You as a being. I mean, I think that's why we connected really well. 2 years ago at that business networking event there's just something about the awareness of just who you are. And it was just so nice to connect with you. But the conversations we had were much like this. When a parent really does something, maybe it's not even that, maybe they're not aware that it's even a fix, like a quick fix.
Yeah.
They're just aware that, the child shuts up. Yeah. So we're just going to use that from now on. It's like the Band-Aid over a bullet hole wound. It's really not going to last long.
Yep.
And if it does, you'll have to keep on using it, because eventually that Band-Aid or that wound underneath the Band-Aid is going to get infected. And you don't know where it's going to become septic in different parts of the body, right?
Yep.
You don't know where that infection will go. And I think it's really key to be mindful of what am I giving my child? Not only from a food standpoint, but from a media standpoint, from a just overall consumption standpoint. What am I feeding my child?
Exactly. What are you feeding your child? And a lot of times, what you're feeding is what you're creating, right? What is within you, what you have an awareness of. So if someone growing up has always seen their parents people please, or not wanting to get into anybody's bad book and want to avoid conflict, even if it means having people walk all over you, maybe that's the kind of child you'd be bringing up, because that's what the child has seen you do. So you definitely have to be very, very careful in terms of what you are feeding your child.
Yeah. And a lot of these things that you're talking about, most people are very, very unaware, from my experience and my observation, that these tendencies or things about themselves are even like a little bit aware of. They might just think that it's normal just to say yes to everyone and become miserable at the end of the day when there's nothing left for them, right? They actually just think it's normal because they haven't met someone who does things differently. Yeah. They haven't got close to someone who does things differently.
And sometimes it's not just miserable, it's anger. Anger,
yes.
Keeping things pent up also leads to a lot of toxic anger that they might take out on others in the family itself or at work or with just themselves, causing self-harm, anything. So it's important for you to be in awareness and acknowledgement of your feelings and also your own self. How are you feeling right now? Which is why, How Are You Really, Mom? What a title for your podcast, really.
Thank you. It did come to me after, I would say, probably 2 months of wondering, what title should I give my podcast?
Yeah.
I just left it. I was like, I'll let it come to me. And then it did. Because really the how are you? We always ask that. We always ask that question. But how many of us actually are present and conscious of how we respond with it? It has the power to really open up how you really are.
Really, that really sticks up. Thank you for asking us. It's about time somebody did.
No, you're so welcome. Because it does. It does. It says what your state is. Your state of being right now is how you are.
Yes.
And what I've come to realize in the last probably 6 to 8 months, Ruqya, is that how you are, if you just manage how you are, who you are, what you do, they come after that. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how you are. So how are you really? And it's not easy. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not easy to smile, right? It's not easy to stay in a constant state of smile. It's easy to smile, the action of smile, but to be in a constant state of smiling, that takes a lot of effort and a lot of work.
Yes, it does.
So I commend you on the work that you do.
Thank you. And what you said about letting it come to you. So even the smile, when I was creating it for my TED, I didn't know I was creating it for my TEDx talk. I knew I was coming in on stage. I knew what my overarching story is going to be. And I knew the concept was about ownership of your life. However, I needed a hook idea. And there I was saying, okay, let this come to me. I played around with words and smile jumped at me. And the very first one of the smile is silence your mind. There's so much of clutter that goes on in your head if you just choose to silence it. So instead of, making an effort and running after the title, you just allowed it to come to you in silence. And that's the beauty of it. And therefore,
Yeah. I would love to ask Ruqya, if it's okay for some of our listeners, I'd love to know what are some of the awareness tools you use? I mean, you just gave a really, really powerful one there, is learning to silence your mind, right? What are some of the awareness tools or the daily things that you do to really train your awareness and become aware of your behaviors, your actions, and all these?
Would it be okay if I shared the smile itself?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
So S is silence your mind. M stands for manage your attention. When you are in a situation, how do you maneuver through it? Where does your attention go? Does it go towards what's going on positive in your world, or does it work towards what's negative? How do you align yourself in a scenario? I is identify the intention. So like when your mom calls you up and asks you if you've had your have you completed your work? Where are you right now? The intention, understanding the intention behind it and not panicking. Identifying why you're doing what you're doing. That's the core of it. If you look at the smile as the word itself, I is at the central. The intention is always central to what you do. L is let things go. So tough one. So 10 different countries, Shaun, and everywhere when I reach L and I say let things go, there has to be at least 2 people in the room who stand up and say, but it's not my fault. Why should I forgive the other person? That's why I said, we're all different, but we're still the same. It's still the same things that hold us back. It's still the same things that we, have our ego about. And those are the little hurts that you have in your heart where you're like, what do I do about this? So L is a major one. It's letting things go. It's about forgiveness. It's about letting go of labels. It's about letting go of past failures. What else? Letting go of success, even for that matter, If you've had a win, just let go and move past it, because you can't keep coming back and comparing today to a good day that you had yesterday, because every day is different. And last but not least is E, which is energize the possibilities, which means, you listen to podcasts, you have conversations with people, but until you put energy into what is possible, until you take some kind of action towards it, things are not going to change. So energize the possibilities.
Wow. I mean, that tool itself is liberating, right? That tool itself. And I love the L, because letting things go, if we think, right, that we're going to let it go, the thought itself means you're holding on to it. It's very challenging to let things go, especially when they're so deeply ingrained into your physiology, because ultimately, this is what I've learned through my experience and through different mentors and things like that. Your nose that you have right now on your face comes from your great, 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 great grandma, right? And how do I know? Well, if I found a photo of her, I promise you it would look the same. And what I mean by that, in that contrast, is that we are given basically a hand of cards from a big deck that is life. And it's not that we can just change them and chop them. We can't do that. But we can, however, change how we play, and because the cards that come out. Yeah, exactly. It's how we're playing the game based on that proximity approach of the people we surround ourselves with. So generally, when we start life, it's our family or our caregivers, right?
Yes.
Then we go to school and it becomes our friends. And there's just constant influence from different kind of areas of people, whether it's still family, whether it's extended family, whether it's just like your neighborhood, your communities, things like that. As you kind of broaden your horizon, you go to things like university, you go to higher education and things like that. You start traveling the world, right? Like I love that you've been able to do that in what you do, because it gives you that really expansive, not only knowledge, experience of seeing that strategy or a tool like the S.M.I.L.E, the SMILE, really allows you to see that we're all basically one in the same.
And it wasn't just
Powerful.
thank you. Yes, absolutely. So it's when you transition from just your little space to looking outside, and how you beautifully said about your family, your extended family, school, colleagues, and then the world at large, that's when you truly realize how we're all the same, have the same aspirations, have the same fears, and therefore you could be the safe space for somebody else just as they can for you,
Yeah.
if you should choose to keep judgment aside and ego.
Yeah. But it's not easy to do.
No.
Because like I said, as soon as you start thinking about it, well, you're still holding on to it. It's really that fine balance, that space between when you breathe in and you breathe out. There's just this little space between, not even the pause, just the transition between the two. And if you're able to really navigate that and connect your psychology and your physiology together, you get into this really powerful state where you're able to just allow. And you have to allow or surrender, right? And I think just so that all the listeners and the viewers are really up to what we're talking about, like this comes back to what you said before, taking ownership. As a parent, you have taken on a huge responsibility to lead and guide the next generation of people on this planet. And I want you to just really be conscious with that for just a moment, because we are in a time now that you don't have to be a parent. You don't have to have kids, right? Because the human species will survive if you don't have kids. If this generation, you decide not to, it's a conscious decision. For some, it's not. And what I'm saying is just make that responsibility conscious. How you're responding to maybe your kids are older and there's still, the more you change yourself, the more you're able to respond to your life, the more you allow your kids to do it too. And I think it's so important just to let the new parents especially lead their kids from that example, that place of example, just like Ruqya is doing here. She's showing her kids that the world is full of possibility and you have to be the one to go and play.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaun. And I think
No.
so much of pressure is on the parents to do things right. Yes. So I'm just gonna sidetrack a bit. We learn from our mistake. There is no such thing as perfect parenting. Cut yourself some slack. Be in a space where you can forgive yourself. Yes, being mindful, being aware, being present with your child is important. However, God forbid, if something should go wrong minorly, there are sometimes parents who get into this place of paranoia. They get like these helicopter moms who have to do everything right and it has to be perfect. Listen, there's a quote of mine where I say the concept of perfection is flawed.
That's very true.
Right?
Yes, I totally agree.
You can either keep it real or perfect.
It becomes the limitation, the search.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is my family, when I was going through high school, we all studied Japanese. One of my older brothers is actually married to a Japanese girl, and the Japanese, from what I understand, is they come from a really interesting culture. They agree that perfection is not only impossible, but there's actually something inside of them that still seeks it, right? They accept that it is not possible, but they still strive to attain it. And I think that says so much about just the character of certain people, is that they have created so many wonderful things in the last probably 50 to 100 years.
Yes.
Like, it's really amazing the tech innovations that came out of Japan during different eras, right? And what you're saying is to lean into that what I'm talking about here with the Japanese is that they've learned to innovate through dropping perfectionism, but still letting it come to them. So they've let go of the egoic mind that I have to find it. It's more just like, well, we're just going to go anyway, because what's going to happen beyond my own limitation is going to be better than if I put, well, this is the end point. This is where I'm going.
True. Like I said earlier, it's about being curious instead of being correct.
Yes. Curiosity is really, it's the key, because we are curious as humans, but you can only really be curious when you're not in fear.
Yes.
Would you agree with that, Ruqya?
I do. Yes, when you're not in fear and when you're curious, you will definitely make discoveries that'll be different to you. They will speak to you differently. So, for instance, you might find a box that's sealed up and tight, and if you find that from a place of fear, you would imagine there's something dangerous in there. The worst of its kind could come to your mind. But if you look at it from a place of curiosity and keep the fear aside, it could be a treasure box, it could be a time capsule, it could be anything that your mind desires for it to be. But you come from an openness instead of a fear mindset.
Yeah. Actually, I remember when our girl was born, 5 and a bit months ago, one of the nurses came in and said, what's really interesting is about children, or just us as human beings, is if we were taken, like abducted, aliens abducted us and took us to a planet that we knew nothing about, right? If we didn't have any preconceived notion about what was happening and we just ended up in a place, we'd actually be open and curious about what was going on and what was happening. We wouldn't be fearful. And it's like the child that goes to school on their very first day. If they don't know what school is and they have no idea what's happening on that day, they're just going to walk in and be like, wow, this is really interesting. And they're just going to be open and curious. Yep. The second day, however, because there's already preconceived notions about what's happening, maybe they don't like the teacher, or the teacher's, I don't know, somehow mean to them, or whatever is going on, that's when they cry. Because they have those memories of what happened yesterday.
It's a filter. It's a filter that they're using to look at their world. It's a filter that we use to look at our world. And I think that's where generational trauma and other things come to us as baggage that we receive from our ancestors, from our family. And it's important for you to realize, take that piece of baggage, open it up and say, does this serve me? Is this really the truth? What can I do with this? And then make a decision. Do you really want to keep it with you? Do you want to keep it aside? Or do you want to put an end to it by actually addressing the elephant in the room? A lot of times we don't find closure in a relationship. And that's why things keep occurring over and over again. Another thing that I say is life is a firm teacher. Until you get that lesson, it's going to keep repeating the lesson over and over again in different shapes and forms. So it's important for you to understand what's life trying to teach you and then grow yourself from there.
Yeah. I love life is a firm teacher. That's such a great quote. I mean, life is a firm teacher. It's really great because I've heard life is a teacher. Life is the greatest teacher.
Yes.
But life being a firm teacher means, well, they've got a standard. That teacher has a standard. And if you don't rise your awareness or your consciousness to that standard, you're not going to get the lesson, because you can't make yourself conscious. It means you're going to just make yourself continuously compulsive.
Right.
And being in continuous compulsions just means that you're leading a very unconscious life. Nothing wrong with that. However, if you want a better life, you need to make it conscious so that you can break that cycle of compulsion. Yeah. Well, Ruqya, we are nearing the end of today's episode. So one, I just want to really, really thank you for being here. And two, I'd actually love to ask this question, if it's okay.
Yes,
and that is, knowing what you know now and all the awareness that you've accumulated, and also going through and seeing that most human beings are still just human beings, what would you do going back to your very first child? What would you say to yourself? What piece of advice would you give to yourself, knowing that this child's going to live out the values that you've not taught them, but given them at an unconscious level? But secondly, for them to live a life of their own choice. What would you tell yourself going back and looking back to that very first moment your child came in to your work?
I'm going to take a moment to think this one through. I actually ask myself to trust myself. And I think I need to.
Trust yourself.
Yeah, and that's something that I just don't need to tell myself on that particular time, but also every day.
Yeah. How much of a reminder do you think you're worth it, right? You're worthy of trusting yourself.
So trusting yourself is important, whether it is in being a mom, whether it is being a daughter, being a wife, being a friend, being a colleague, being a coach, being a speaker, being a S.M.I.L.E strategist, being a podcast host. It's being a dad. Just trusting yourself is so, so important, and being kind to yourself, not letting the expectations of others impact who you think you are. I was reading somewhere, there are 4 layers to it. There is who you are, there is who people think you are, and then there is who you think people are thinking you are, and then there's another one to it. I'm going to write that down in comments when I pick it up. But yeah, there are layers to it, right? You think something of yourself, and yeah, it's who you would like people to think of you as.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that wisdom, because ultimately who you think you are is probably not who you really
Exactly.
are. Because if you just stop and allow yourself to find that space within your mind where you're not thinking and you're just allowing, you're being in a state of receivership.
Sure.
I mean, that itself takes a lot of work. That itself can take years, if not lifetimes, to get to that point.
Yes.
However, just even a brief moment in that space can allow you to see not only who you really are, but how you really are.
Oh,
And so it just opens up possibilities, because your identity is the thing that you've created. If you want to create something different, you need to stop and pause and realize that you're not who you think you are, or who everybody else thinks you are.
there's more to you.
Yeah. Well, Ruqya, that brings us to the end of today's episode. I just want to really thank you for being here with me today. It's been a wonderful opportunity to get to know you more,
Thank you so much.
and also appreciate you being a S.M.I.L.E strategist, but you being a mum too. Your kids aren't young. They're their own people. They're in their 20s now. I mean, it must be so nice just to watch them grow up. And, one of them just got married recently as well. I mean, there's so many things happening, right? It's so wonderful.
Thank you so much, Shaun. And I wish you the best on your podcast and your dad role. And I am just so, so grateful to being here on the show. And thank you for having me.
You're so, so welcome. So if you've loved this episode, I just really would love for you to like and share, please. And also give it a 5-star rating if you really enjoyed it. So this helps us grow the show. And because this show is grown organically, there's no paid ads or anything like that. So for this to reach more people, if you found it helpful and insightful, just share it with one person. We'd really appreciate that. And if you like Ruqya Khan and what she's said today, well, please, I'll ask you to connect with her. Ruqya, can you please just give us all an insight what's the best way to connect with
So
you?
you can reach me on my website, which is ruqyakhan.com. The spelling's right there, yes. And ruqyakhan.com, or else ruqya.khan@gmail.com. And I also have my own YouTube channel under the
Beautiful.
same name. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make sure to link all of Ruqya's links in the show notes. And yeah, if you want to connect with her, I'd highly encourage you to, because she is a lady of wisdom and integrity. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this episode, please comment and also connect with Ruqya. And if you want Ruqya on again and you want us to speak about something really impactful or insightful for you, just let us know. We'll make it happen. Have a beautiful one. Take care. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Don't miss out on each episode released weekly. Hit that subscribe button and join our community today. Because remember, we're in this together, Mum.